Hi everybody, welcome to the Evening Reader. My name is Priscilla. How are you today? I hope that you're doing well. Thanks for coming to visit me. Today I'm going to do the first half of my April wrap-up. It was a good month. That was a pretty good reading month for me. I got a lot of reading done because I was not working for 2 weeks and we went to the States to visit our families, and then I also had a few extra days off when we got back to one to recover, sort of try to help recover from jet lag. One is a big national holiday here in the Netherlands called King's Day or Queen's Day. Long story. And then just sort of the day after that to just really sort of recover from both of those things. And yeah, so having time off work and traveling, I got a lot of reading done, more than I would in a typical month if I was just in my usual routine. I usually read only 4 or 5 books a month, so I'm not, I don't get a lot of reading done. Long story. Maybe something to talk about for Mental Health May. And so I ended up reading like 8.5 books, which that sounds odd, but the first book that I finished this month, or well, it wasn't the first book I finished, but one book I finished, it was Robin Hobb's Ship of Magic, and it is an 880-page book, and I was about 400 pages in at the start of the month, and I finished that before we left for our trip. So that's about an extra 480 pages. So that's a decent amount of reading to finish up that book, and all the books in this particular trilogy are huge. So I'll probably pick the next one up in June, but we'll see. And then I read my first book for TransGirlApril, which was Nevada by Imogen Binnie. I have a dedicated video for that, which I'll link below. And then I also read The Silent Woman, Sylvia Plath and Ted Hughes by Janet Malcolm for People April. And I didn't do a dedicated video on that one, but I did talk about it, so I'll link that as well. So on the trip, I took my other 2 books. My other TransGirlApril book was The Death of Vivek Oji by Akwaeke Emezi. And for People April, my other book was Why Karen Carpenter Matters by Karen Tongson. And those are the books that I'll talk about today a little bit later. And then I think, I mentioned in my rambling video that I also read Curtis Sittenfeld's Rodham, about sort of the novel about Hillary Rodham, not Hillary Rodham Clinton, because the premise of the book is that she does not marry Bill Clinton, that she lives her life and becomes president, but she does become involved with Bill Clinton, but she doesn't marry him. So that was very good. And I told myself that I had to read that book before I could read her latest book, which is romantic comedy. And I read that as well. Very much enjoyed both of those, and I'll talk about those in the second part of my April wrap-up. And then I mentioned that I read The Uncommon Reader by Alan Bennett, which is the lovely, lovely book about the Queen Elizabeth II becoming an avid reader and a writer. Just a lovely and wonderful book. I think I talked about that probably enough or at some length on my rambling video. I rambled about it. And but I still highly recommend it. I'm looking forward to reading that one again. It's a book that you can easily read in a day, and it's worth reading in a day, and you will find yourself underlining many, many things. If everybody here on BookTube, we love to read, and we believe that reading enriches our lives, and it's really wonderful to watch this character discover how enriching and wonderful reading can be. So especially a personality that is somebody like the Queen, who has, for most of her life, had to remain so impartial and so, sort of just focused on her duty, really. So, yeah. So, again, a recommendation. And then the final book that I read, which I actually just finished today, was Silver Sparrow by Tayari Jones, which was also fantastic. And I'll talk about that in the second video as well, probably. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the two books that I read again. So for People April, I read Why Karen Carpenter Matters by Karen Tongson. This was a pretty short book. Uh, I think if you had a physical copy, I think it's only 138 pages, but it has notes as well. I read it on Kindle. This is a series. This Why Music Matters is a series that is published by the University of Texas Press. And I think they took it over from somebody else. Not that that really matters, but there are other artists as well. So you may want to take a look and see if there's some other artists that you're interested in, if you're interested in music or books about music. They had one on like the Ramones, they had the Beach Boys, they had Patti LaBelle, they had, I don't know why, those are the random names that are coming to me. But I think there were about 10 books that are published in this series. This one was interesting. So Karen Tongson is from the Philippines, and she moved to the United States when she was 8 or 9 years old. Her family in the Philippines is a musical family. They actually are kind of famous in the Philippines for having sort of like I think it's her. I think her uncles. They have like a famous jazz, kind of like a jazz band. And her mother was a singer, and her father was also a singer. But they sang. I think they sang like lounge. Her mother now, I think, is devoted to singing jazz, but she sang sort of like lounge classics. So like crooner type songs like Frank Sinatra and that kind of thing, but then also more modern music as well. I'm very today. Uh, but more modern music as well. So in the late 60s and early 70s, she was singing things like The Fifth Dimension and the Carpenters. And so I mean, Karen Tongson is named Karen after Karen Carpenter because her mother loved the Carpenters so much. And so she kind of feels, in a way, this kinship. And also, the Carpenters were a huge part of her childhood. They were sort of this soundtrack to her childhood, if you will. And when she moved to America, she was really kind of excited to be able to be in America and in California and not very far away from where the Carpenters lived in Downey. Karen Tongson lived in Riverside. And then she was going to be able to show off to her American friends her knowledge of this American music and share that. And then only to find out that, by the time she got here and was in school, that most people thought the Carpenters were corny and that they weren't very popular anymore. So that was kind of a sad and interesting thing. And she goes into a lot about Karen Carpenter's history and how Karen Carpenter herself was like sort of a tomboy, and she was not the musical one in the family. That was her brother Richard. And it was her brother Richard who was really pursuing music, and Karen was always sort of in his shadow. Their mother was very over involved with Richard, and very kind of I don't know that she was necessarily like a stage mother, but just he got a lot of praise and a lot of attention, and Karen just didn't really. And she played sports and these kinds of things, and then Richard kind of brought her into the fold musically, and she ended up, long story short, sort of becoming the voice of the Carpenters. I mean, she is uh, what you think of. You don't, she started on the drums, but they got her out from the drums. She wanted to play drums. That was what she was most interested in doing. She asked a boy in the high school band to teach her how to play drums. And she was very sort of introverted, I guess you could say. And she started off back there, and they said, no, 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 the pretty girl has to get out front. So they kind of switched. And when they switched, she really did become the face of the Carpenters, and which did, I think, drive her brother a little bit crazy. So Tongson doesn't, I mean, she spent some time on their history and sort of how the Carpenters were formed. And I think all of this stuff it's history that's covered elsewhere. Richard Carpenter has his own autobiography. There's a documentary of the Carpenters. And they've been covered in lots of other stories and different things. And so she does talk about Karen Carpenter's eating disorder and some of the issues that they struggled with about their image. They didn't really necessarily set out to be square. I mean, that they were just very square, considered to be very corny and kind of square, and they were always kind of trying to buck against that a little bit, but also they didn't want to upset the reputation that they had built. So it was really difficult. It was not an easy life. And Karen Tongson also, she's got musical ability herself. And so in a bit of the book, she goes into some of their songs and their arrangements and how different arrangements worked and things. And she goes a little bit Rick Beato on the whole thing. So, it's kind of, I guess you're getting the feeling that it is a little bit all over the place. And then at the end, Karen Tongson starts to talk about the Carpenters and how popular they are in the Philippines, and then also to try to draw some parallels between Karen Carpenter and herself, Karen Tongson, realizing that she was gay and what the Carpenters mean for the gay or LGBTQIA community, I guess I should say, actually. And that part was interesting, but it was a little bit, I didn't really come across to me that I didn't really get that idolship was necessarily really there, but I did get that it meant something to her, Karen Tongson. So it was a little bit like if you had a good friend and your good friend was telling you why, I believe that this person is an idol for this thing, but it's not necessarily like a well-known idol. Or yeah, I don't want to say that it was a stretch because I don't know. I haven't read anything else about that. But it seemed to me that it was more personal, and that she's making a case based more on something that she sees as a personal parallel in her own life with Karen Carpenter's life, and things that she has experienced as a queer woman that also Karen Carpenter experienced in kind of having to stay in her own closet, if you will, and really hiding who she was and not really being allowed to be more than Karen Carpenter. Like, she just was kind of hemmed in by her family. So it was an interesting read. If you're really interested in the Carpenters, it might be interesting. It was less interesting than I expected. I guess I would put it that way. So I was okay. I would say it was 3 stars for me. I don't really like to give star ratings, but it might be helpful for other people. So for me, it was 3 stars. It was fine. So my second book for TransGirlApril was The Death of Vivek Oji by Akwaeke Emezi, and I'm gonna try to do it justice because honestly, reading it on the plane, and I didn't take any notes or anything. I did enjoy it. I think it was an interesting read. The structure of it and how Emezi approaches the story was very well done. And it's one of those books that it's difficult to talk about because I don't want to give anything away. But you know at the very beginning of the book that Vivek Oji is dead. And right at the very start of the book, Vivek's mother, Kavita, finds them on the front porch of the family home. And Vivek's head has been bashed in, and I think Vivek never really becomes a she in the book, but is laying, on the porch and like has I think maybe a broken leg or a broken ankle, laying very awkwardly, clothing stripped away, but then a wrap around his lower body so that he is not naked. And so obviously this starts with a violent image, and this mother finding her child on the porch. And then it follows sort of 2 parallel lines, and one is Kavita, Vivek's mother, trying to find out what happened to Vivek, because the death is sort of dismissed, like it accident, like we don't know what happened, it was just an accident. There was a riot on the day of Vivek's death, and so sort of the explanation is that something must have happened at the riot. But Kavita says she cannot rest. She has to know what happened to Vivek, and so she starts to question everybody that Vivek knows. And then the second track of the book actually goes back in time to when Vivek is when his parents meet, or when their parents meet, and it tells the story going forward of Vivek's group of friends. And it sort of then culminates in the end. You learn what happened, as Kavita does. You actually will know before Kavita knows what happened, sort of part of it anyway. So, like I said, this is a difficult book to talk about without really giving too much away, but I really liked the way it was structured, and I liked the way the information is revealed slowly to us. And we get to see Vivek as a child, and then we get to see Vivek growing up. And Vivek is very close to his cousin. So we have Chika and we have Akwaeke. I hope I'm saying these names correctly. And they are brothers, and their mother was Ahuna, and I think that's how you say it. And Ahuna dies on the day that Vivek is born. And this is not really good luck. So I don't know why I'm laughing. This is, it's very sad and a very happy day at the same time. But Chika and Akwaeke are kind of close, but they are a little bit estranged. Akene is married to Mary. They have a son named Osita, who is a year older than Vivek, and then I believe a year, maybe 2 years. And then Chika is married to Kavita, who is actually Indian. She is not Nigerian. Oh, they're in Nigeria. She is not Nigerian. And so we see Vivek and Osita growing up together, and then also we're introduced to their group of friends that they go to school with, and their friends are part of a group that Kavita belongs to, sort of a social. It's just a social group basically called the Niger Wives. And these are wives who are women who are married to Nigerian men, but they themselves are not Nigerian. So I believe there is a Canadian woman, there is another another Asian woman. I'm very sorry, I can't remember if she is Japanese or Korean, maybe. I guess it doesn't really matter. But their children then are friends with Vivek and Osita. And so we see them starting to grow up, and then they get a little older and they start interacting in, they hit puberty and they start interacting in different ways, and they sometimes pair off, and the way kids grow up together. And I believe Vivek is sent then to military school, and Osita is at home. He's sent to military school because his father wants to toughen him up. And when he comes back, and then Osita goes to college, and there are many changes, and Vivek starts to change. Vivek goes then, I think, to college, and he's only there for a little while, and his father comes and gets him. And then everybody starts to say that Vivek is having a breakdown. That's sort of the quiet news that's happening. And then at that point, we sort of start to see, we start to get more of a picture of Vivek's world and what's actually going on. And it's multi-point of view, so it goes around. We only get Vivek's voice a few times, and the chapters in Vivek's voice are very short, usually. But Kavita, Osita, and then Juju, who is one of their friends, they all have chapters. And I believe there are other characters. It sort of goes through so that you kind of get different perspectives. And I really liked this about it. And it was very interesting. So Kavita and Chika are worried about Vivek, but they're not sure what to do. And Osita's mother, Mary, is very religious. She's like fundamentalist, evangelical, Christian type of religious. And she tries to pull Vivek into her church, and they end up trying to give Vivek an exorcism, and it's very upsetting. It breaks the family apart. But Kavita and Chika they still are not fully grasping what's going on with Vivek. And Vivek has grown his hair very long and is very not eating, and is very slender. But he finds with his friends, or they find with their friends, and I do keep saying he because that's the pronoun used in the book. Especially, when it's Kavita and when it's Osita as well. If it's he's rescued in a way by his friends, and finds that he can begin to be himself, or they can begin to be themselves, or and So we get to see Vivek in that situation, and we get to see what's going on, and we get to see more dynamics between the friends, which is very interesting. It's very, very fluid and really kind of beautiful how they kind of have their own language and they have their own understanding of each other. And Juju finds herself I would almost say that she and Vivek are almost in a way in love, but not necessarily in a way that's sexual. And because Juju is in love with another girl named Elizabeth, and it's very and Vivek has a relationship with Osita. And I don't know if I should say that is that a trigger warning for incest, because they are first cousins, and I don't know, but I don't know if that is or not. In other countries, I not judging. I don't know if that should be a trigger warning or not. Just very honestly, but that is there. And the friends know to a point what's happened, and one person knows exactly what has happened, knows exactly how Vivek dies. One person knows. And you don't know who that person is until the end of the book. And it's a meditation, really, I think, on very much how having expectations and not doing a better job or trying to understand who a person is and who a person needs to be happy and to have a full life, and how that in itself can be a form of violence against a person who is really striving to be somebody they need to be. And that not in a Vivek is never cast out. He is never, his parents are not they don't hate him. They love him and they are worried about him, but they don't understand him, and they buck against understanding. I guess that's the best way to say it. So that in itself is a sort of it's sort of like a door closes and a window opens, but the window that opens isn't great. It's like a window where there's a storm outside. And by making Vivek have to suppress in some areas, it means that, things get out other ways, and the results is this insensible death. So yeah, like I said, I don't want to give anything away. So it was a really interesting and wonderfully written, beautifully written book. So I highly recommend it. I think it's absolutely worth reading, and I think I will read it again, because it was a little like, I'm not sure what's going on here, and I wasn't sure how to think of certain things. And, it took me a while. It took me a while to think through what it was that Emezi was trying to accomplish with that death. So, yeah, it's just a beautiful book. It's a very good book. So that was a 5-star. It was another 5-star read for me. So I basically had 2 5-star reads for TransGirlApril. So yay me. And yay to Kevvie at Say Kevvie and Willow at Books and Bow for hosting this wonderful event, and Roz at Scally Dandying About the Books for hosting People April. Both of these were fun to participate in, and especially TransGirlApril was just remarkable. Both of those books were just outstanding. So I look forward to reading more off the lists that they provided for the event. Um, and, just continuing on as with these things on my TBR, like, how do I say, like any other books, because I think that, how do I say that? Books are books are books. Hopefully we're all trying to read broadly, but we're also reading that because that's what we want to read, and it's not performative or um but that, when you cast out and you read something that's not, you think it's not in your wheelhouse, or it's something that you don't know about, you go, oh, and then it just becomes more a part of the pool. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. I hope that was not just completely an eloquent way to say that. It may be, and I'm still blaming the jet lag. So anyway, I will be back in a few days with my second half of my wrap up to talk about Curtis Sittenfeld and Tayari Jones. And I hope that you all have a terrific rest of your weekend out there. Okay. And yeah, let me know about your April. God, I know I always just get so nervous when I'm closing and then I ask a question. Let me know how your April was. Let me know if you're interested in any of these books. And yeah, well, we'll talk again in a couple of days. And I can ask more questions then. Okay, take care. Bye.